Hi everybody, and welcome to my second of two videos on the Canon EOS-1 V. In this video we're going to talk about how to use this camera. The first video we saw what all of the buttons are, and in this video we're going to talk about what all of them do, with the exception of the buttons underneath this side panel here. These buttons we're going to talk about in the third video. First thing we're going to do is talk about how to mount and unmount a lens. Now, as we said in the first video, this is an interchangeable lens camera. So if you have a lens on your camera, you push down on the lens release button here, which is underneath the V, and rotate the lens counter or anti-clockwise and remove it. Now you've removed the lens. If you don't have a lens on your camera, then to mount one, you look for the red dot on your lens and the red dot on the lens mounting flange. Line them up and rotate clockwise, and now you've mounted your lens. Next thing we're going to do is load and unload film. And so first thing you do to load film is you open the back, you push this button here with that is on this side of the camera, and then slide the lock release down and open up the back. You want to take your roll of film, and as you can see, here are the DX codes on the film that we talked about in the first video. They line up with the DX code reader, and you want to put it in like this. There's a rewind connection right here. You want to put it in so that you're connecting with that first. If you try to put it in this way, you're not going to get anywhere and you're just going to break your camera. So put it in there. Now we want to pull out a leader until the end of the film is lined up with this orange index. Close, and let's turn it on. Now this is in silent wind, so that was the silent wind mode, which is really quiet. Now when this camera loads the film, the first thing it does is imprint a code into the leader. You can turn that on or off. It's on for this camera. And that code makes it really easy to track your film if you're downloading the EXIF data from this camera, because it links EXIF data to the code. The code is a 2-digit number hyphen 3-digit number. The 3-digit number the camera picks, it's a sequential number. That's all you can do. The 2-digit number is one you pick. The year end, like 15 for 2015, like it is this year, is a pretty good way to do it. Or if you have multiple people using the camera, you can assign them each a 2-digit code to keep whose film is whom's correct. The camera's in silent drive mode, so let's advance some film here. You can hear the shutter there going at the camera's in-body high frame rate. Two more and this will automatically rewind. It's set to silent rewind, so you'll get to hear that. You can set it to automatically rewind, which I could have sworn that I had, but if it doesn't, then you just push this rewind button here. Once you've gone through your roll of film and you've rewound it, to get to it, you just simply open the film back again. And if you have it set to leave a leader, it will do that. If you have it set not to leave a leader, it will pull the film entirely back into the cassette. Typically for film, I like to pull the film all the way back into the cassette. That lets me know what I have and have not used. And that prevents me from accidentally doing double exposures. Next thing we're going to do here is change the battery. To change the battery, you just need to have a coin, a quarter, or whatever fits. I'm going to unscrew this lock right here. Come on. I promise I'm not inept. Just going to unscrew that lock. There we go. And it shouldn't fall out. Now once you've got that unscrewed, this just slides right out. This is the whole grip. And you can see that that lock isn't going to fall out. And then where's the battery? So you can see inside the battery compartment there are a bunch of contacts for when you have the different power grips on. The battery itself is right in here, and it's a 2CR5 battery. And just slides right into that little compartment, and you close it shut. When you've got the new battery in, you just put the grip back on and tighten the screw shut. Next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to change the focusing screen on this camera. The first thing you need to do is take off the lens. Now right here, you can see there's a little clip. Just pull it forward, and then the focusing screen in a tray pops right out. You can see that the focusing screen has a tab on the right side. The focusing screen for the Canon will come typically with a tweezers or removable tool, but since I don't have that, I'm just going to use a standard tweezers, not that one. There we go. And you can see the focusing screen here. Now, one thing that's nice to be able to remove it is not just to be able to change it out for a different one, but also to be able to access the underside of the prism so that you can clean it if some dirt gets in there. Now you've got your new focusing screen here. What you want to do is take it in your tool, your focusing screen changing tool, which is not a generic tweezers, I promise. Slide it in like that. You want to have the tab be on this side of the camera. So the tab approximately for the focusing screen should line up with the space between the C and the A in Canon. Now you just pull this up here and close it, making sure that the whole time you do this, don't touch the mirror on that, because the mirror is a surface-coated silver mirror, and if you touch it with your fingers, you're going to tarnish the mirror and get a fingerprint on it, which is extremely, extremely difficult to take off. You can help prevent that by wearing lintless gloves or something along those lines, but the best bet to protecting your mirror is just simply to not touch it. So here we are looking at the top of the camera, and here's the flash hot shoe. It's, I believe, still it's the same as the most advanced Canon flash hot shoe that's still used, I believe. Don't quote me on that, I'm not a Canon expert. You can put a flash in here. You can also connect it to the PC port, which is down here on the side that we saw in the first video. Flash sync on this is 1/250th of a second, which is a pretty good sync speed, so that's really good for daylight flash sync use. So let's take a look at what's in the camera's viewfinder. So along the bottom, what you can see is the shutter speed there, 1/500th of a second, the aperture f1.8. Sorry for the shaky cam here. I'm in aperture priority mode, so if I change the aperture, you can see it changes the aperture that's displayed. The green circle, I believe, tells you that you have something in focus. Over here is your light meter, and the dot in the center tells you that you are properly exposing your image. I'm going to set this into manual mode, and you can see over on the right, as I'm going to go through the shutter speed, M tells me I'm in manual mode. I'm at 1/60th of a second now. I'm going to go up to 1/50th, and then I'm going to get faster. I'm way overexposed right now. But as I get to a faster shutter speed, there at 1/800th, I'm pretty well exposed. But if I keep going faster and faster and faster, now I'm getting underexposed. And other than that, that's it. Now you can see, let's turn on autofocus here. With autofocus on, if I hold down the button to select an autofocus point, it lights up all of the available autofocus points. And then using the control wheels on the top and back of the camera, I can select a different autofocus point if I just want to manually select one. So what we just saw is what it looks like through the viewfinder. When you look through the viewfinder, what you're seeing is 100% of the image that's going to be on the film. So what that means is that, let's say that right now what you're seeing in this screen is what is in the viewfinder. That means that everything from edge to edge, top to bottom, will be on the film. And when you look through the viewfinder, you're getting a 72% magnification, meaning you're seeing the image that's at 72% of the size of what it's going to be on the film. Gone are the days of 98% magnification for most cameras of this vintage. Because of autofocus, it's not with manual focus, you need to have a large bright image, but with autofocus you don't so much. So that's why this has a relatively small image magnification. The metering modes are evaluative, partial, spot, center weighted averaging, and focus point linked. So evaluative takes all of the metering zones, of which there are 21 metering zones, and it looks at those metering zones and ascertains the best exposure by looking at the light and the dark in those zones. So a couple things to bear in mind about evaluative metering. If you're using manual focusing, if your lens is switched from AF to MF, then the evaluative metering is based on the center focusing point. Also, if the subject brightness and background light levels are very different, which is to say there's a strong backlight or a strong subject spotlight, then you want to use partial metering or spot metering instead of evaluative metering, because evaluative metering does not compensate for high contrast situations. The next one is partial metering. This covers 8.5% of the center of the scene. There are 5 metering zones shaped like an X in the middle of the scene that constitute 8.5% of the image, and in partial metering they are 100% of the image data. So let's take a look here. To switch metering modes, you use this button right here on this side, and you push it down and use the command wheel to switch between modes. So here we are. If you see this box with parentheses around a dot, or, well, parentheses, it looks kind of like an eye. Anyway, if all of the things in that box right there are lit up, then what that's telling you is that you are in evaluative metering. So if you rotate it and now you have a box with an open circle, it's parentheses or sideways parentheses, that tells you that you're in partial metering. You're using the 8.5% in the center of the frame. Now if we go to the next mode and it's just a dot inside of the box, that tells you that you're in spot metering. Spot metering is the 2.4% of the image right in the very center of the frame. And spot metering is good when your background is much brighter or much darker than your subject. And so is partial metering as well. Spot metering is really well suited if you're going to take a meter reading using your manual control settings or auto exposure lock and then recompose. Spot metering is very accurate, and it's actually my favorite type of metering to use when taking photos. So what spot metering does is if you focus it here, let's say, it would see that this is black, but it would think it was gray. But if you wanted this to look black, you would meter off another part of the image, recompose, and take your picture. Spot metering is also really good for things like action, or if you want to have a subject in the center of the frame. For instance, if you're taking portraits and you want to have the subject's face be properly illuminated and the background either be white or really dark or something like that, or even mid-key, you can spot meter off the subject's face, and then that lets you know that the person you're taking a picture of will be properly illuminated and properly exposed relative to the rest of the image. Let's rotate to the next right here. Now it's an empty square, and that tells you that you're in center weighted averaging metering mode. And what it does is center weighted still takes all of the data from the entire scene, but the middle part of about the size of the oval in the center of the stock focusing screen has the majority of the weight in figuring out what the proper exposure should be. The last metering mode is called focus point linked spot metering. You can't access it by going into your mode selection buttons. You access this by going into the custom functions, which we'll see in the third video. It's custom functions 13-1 and 13-3. And what they do is when they're activated, your focus point in spot mode is linked to your metering point. So if something is in focus over here, that's what's going to be metered. Now if it's in focus over here, that's what's going to be metered. So it's going to meter off of what is in focus with a spot metering reading. To access your camera's drive modes, you push down on the mode button and the metering button on the bottom at the same time. Now this takes you into the blue box there, single frame, continuous, or self-timer. Single frame means that if you push the button and the shutter button and take a picture, you're going to take one picture. You can hold this down until the end of time. It's not going to take a second picture. Continuous means it's going to take 3.5 frames per second. For continuous, unless you have an added battery pack, and then it will take a faster continuous frame rate. And then if you hold down the mode button and the AF button, that brings you up to bracketing. And what this does is this allows you to automatically bracket your pictures up to 3 stops in each direction. To turn off bracketing, there are 2 ways to do it. There's a custom function that automatically turns it off, or if your bracketing does not automatically turn off, then what you have to do when you're done is go back into bracketing and bring it back down to 0. The custom functions will also let you pick which bracketing order you want, and we'll see those in the third video, how to access the custom functions to adjust how bracketing works. The next thing we're going to look at is your AF mode. So if you hold down the AF button, it brings up AI servo or one shot. Now what one shot means is that it focuses on the subject and then keeps taking pictures without changing. AI servo means that it will verify focus between each frame. Let's look at, we're going to push down the AF button and the exposure compensation button and bring up the ISO. You can set your camera will automatically pick up the ISO from the film's DX code, but if you want to push your film, really push it to crazy levels, or if you want to pull it, you can do that. Also, if you have a type of film that doesn't have a DX code on it for some reason, whether it's something like a 25 or 20 ISO film, for instance, or just a one that you can respool yourself, this allows you to manually set the ISO of that film. The last button we're going to look at here is the mode button. So if you hold down mode, you can switch between your shooting modes. So we'll go to P first. P stands for program. What that means is that the camera will determine your proper aperture and shutter speed with no input or help from you whatsoever. AV is aperture value, meaning that you set the aperture using this command wheel right here, and then the camera will select the best shutter speed. In the third video, when we look at the custom functions, you'll see how to change whether you use the wheel on the front or the wheel on the back to set your aperture and shutter speed in these various modes. The next one is DEP, that is DEP. Basically what it means is it's depth of field. The camera selects the optimum aperture to capture everything that is needs to be in focus. So what you would do is you'd set the autofocus point, or you get the camera to focus on your subject. It would evaluate the subject, figure out the best depth of field to get that subject in focus, and take the picture. This next one is M for manual, meaning you get complete control over the shutter speed and aperture, regardless of whether it will give you a good image or not. The camera will take the picture that you want it to. The next one is TV, that is time value or shutter priority, meaning you set the shutter speed and then the camera determines the best aperture. Bulb means that as long as you hold the shutter button down, the shutter will stay open. And now we're back to P. This button right here, as we saw in the first video, illuminates the LCD. The plus minus button allows you to, holding it down, adjust your exposure. So if you're looking at a high contrast scene, let's say you're looking at this scene, very bright over here, dark here, kind of in the middle over here, middle to bright, and you want these shadows to be brought out a little bit more. You want these areas that are bright to be dark, and this is just going to be black, and that's fine. Your camera right now is going to tell you, let's say f5.6 at 1/125th. If you hold down plus minus and you say, well, I'm going to underexpose 1 1/3 stops, that's going to bring it up to 1/300th of a second, let's say. And this will then be dark, this will be a mid-tone, and then this will be slightly darker. And then when you're done, you can set it back, there we go, to the center point. This allows you to control your shutter speed, have some say in it if you're in program mode or any of the others. You can see that I was adjusting it in program mode. So it gives you some creative flexibility in other drive modes besides full manual. Now in aperture priority, if your camera thinks f5.6 and you override it, it's going to say, oh, 1 stop underexposed, f8. Same thing in shutter priority. If your camera thinks 1/500th of a second and you say 1 stop overexposed, it's going to do 1/250th. Basically, this button allows you to take control over your camera's functionality. If you are someone who does flash photography with your camera, then the FEL button, which is Flash Exposure Lock, will be fairly useful to you. Your EOS-1 V can communicate with some of the Canon flash units through it to adjust your flash output and the camera's shutter speed with TTL flash control. If you hit the FEL button, your flash exposure lock button, it locks your flash exposure value into the camera so that the shutter speed, aperture, and flash value are predetermined, and your settings are not changed if you recompose the image or your lighting changes before you have a chance to hit the shutter button. That will not work with every flash, only some of the Canon speedlight flashes, I believe. Here underneath the asterisk button is your auto exposure lock, and what this does is, let's say that you want to get a picture where you're going to be moving the camera to track. You've got a car coming in here and you're at a racetrack, and the car is going to come from this side of the frame where it's really light through this part where it's really dark, and then this part where it's average lighting. You want to use exposure lock when you're here, let's say, because you want to get the car properly illuminated in this spot, but you want to have your focus tracking start over here. So you get a meter reading with your image focused here, hold down the asterisk, the car comes into focus, you get it in focus, you can start snapping photos, and these are going to be overexposed, yes, that's true, but when you get into the spot where you want the image to be, it's going to be in focus and properly exposed, and here then, once it gets through, the background will be blown out and the car will still be approximately properly in focused. And then basically what this does is allow you to save image settings, shutter speed, and aperture despite changing light conditions as you move your camera. It's really good for panning shots, action shots, or places where lighting is changing rapidly, places with bright lights and dark shadows, for instance. So now that we've talked about all of those different functions and how they work, let's put them all together and take a picture with this camera. So you've loaded your film, your camera's detected your ISO. You want to make sure that your shooting mode is in the correct mode for your shooting style. AV, that's my favorite mode, so we're in good shape. You want to make sure that your drive mode is set to the correct drive mode. I happen to like continuous, so we're in good shape. Your autofocus is set to AI servo unless you prefer one shot. I prefer AI servo, so I'm in good shape. And you want to make sure that you are or are not bracketing as you need to be. Hold down the shutter button halfway to focus. And there you go. You're taking photos. All you have to do when you take a photo is look through the viewfinder, compose your image, and go crazy. That's all well and good, but the camera automatically drives. So how do we do double exposures? Double exposures are something I get lots of questions about on these videos. So let's see how to do it. So we're going to open up the side panel. This button right here, you'll see the white button, that's clear, don't push that. This is your multiple exposure button, and it's underneath the multiple exposure symbol. I'm going to set the camera back upright and we'll see how that works. So I'm going to push the multiple exposure button, and now using the command wheel I can set the number of exposures up to 9. Now what this will do is take up to 9 exposures without advancing the film. And then it advances the film. And then afterwards it automatically turns off. I believe there's a custom function to have that stay on, but we'll see that for sure in video 13. The custom functions are intense, confusing, and numerous, so I don't have them all memorized. So that is it for the second video on this, the Canon EOS-1 V. If this video was helpful, please give me a thumbs up. That lets me know I'm on the right track. If you have any questions, suggestions, or anything about this camera or videos in general, please leave them in the comments below, and please make sure your comments are set so that I can respond, and I will. I try to respond pretty quickly. If you'd like to subscribe to find out when I have more photography related videos, you can click on the subscribe button and that will let you know. And if you're an amateur photographer who has taken photos with this camera that you would like to share, feel free to put a link to that in the comments section. One last thing, thank you guys for watching. Take great photos.